when a lonely Wyoming rancher risked everything to save a Cheyenne woman from bounty hunters. He had no idea that single act of courage would lead to the most incredible honor of his life. The tribal council offered him something that hadn't been seen for 3 generations, a sacred ceremony that would transform him from an outsider into a true brother of the tribe. What happened during those 4 mysterious days will restore your faith in the power of honor and brotherhood. Hit that like button, subscribe for more amazing frontier stories, and ring that notification bell, because this tale of the Old West will leave you speechless. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Wyoming Badlands as Marcus Stone checked his fence line, the silence broken only by the distant call of a red-tailed hawk and the steady clip-clop of his horse's hooves on the rocky ground. At 45, Marcus had been working this isolated ranch for 8 years, ever since he'd mustered out of the cavalry and decided he'd had enough of taking orders from other men. His spread wasn't much to look at. 200 acres of rough grazing land wedged between Thunder Canyon and the Sweetwater River, but it was his, bought and paid for with his Army savings and 8 years of backbreaking work. Most folks in the nearby town of Cedar Ridge thought he was crazy for living so far from civilization, but Marcus preferred the company of his cattle and horses to most humans he'd met. He was mending a section of fence that had been damaged by elk when he heard the gunshots echoing from Thunder Canyon. 3 quick shots, then silence, then 2 more. Marcus straightened up, listening hard. Gunfire wasn't unusual out here. Hunters, mostly, or cowboys dealing with predators. But something about the pattern of these shots set his teeth on edge. Marcus had learned to trust his instincts during 10 years of cavalry service, and right now, those instincts were telling him that someone was in serious trouble. He mounted his buckskin gelding, Rex, and rode toward the sound of the shots. Thunder Canyon was a maze of red rock formations and narrow passages that provided perfect cover for both prey and predator. As he approached the canyon mouth, Marcus heard voices carrying on the thin air, men calling to each other, coordinating a search. She went this way. Cut her off at the Narrows. $500 says we bring her back alive. Marcus felt his blood run cold. They were hunting a woman and talking about bounty money. He'd heard stories about men who made their living hunting down escaped reservation Indians, claiming they were returning runaways to proper authority while collecting government payments for their trouble. He dismounted and led Rex into the canyon on foot, moving as quietly as his cavalry training had taught him. The voices were getting closer, and Marcus could make out at least 3 different men. As he rounded a bend in the canyon wall, he saw them, rough-looking men with rifles spread out in a line, driving something deeper into the canyon. That's when he saw her. The woman was Cheyenne, maybe 25 years old, dressed in traditional clothing, but clearly exhausted. She was trapped in a box canyon with no way out except past the hunters. Even from a distance, Marcus could see the desperation in her movements as she searched for an escape route that didn't exist. "There she is," one of the hunters shouted. "End of the line, squaw." The word hit Marcus like a slap. He'd served alongside Cheyenne scouts during his Army days and knew they were people of dignity and courage who deserved better than to be hunted like animals by men motivated only by greed. Marcus had 2 choices: ride away and pretend he'd never seen anything, or get involved in something that was none of his business and probably get himself killed in the process. The decision took him about 2 seconds. "Hey," Marcus called out, stepping into view with his rifle in his hands. "What's going on here?" The 3 hunters spun around, surprised by his sudden appearance. The leader was a big man with a scarred face and the kind of eyes that had seen too much violence and enjoyed it. "Nothing that concerns you, mister," the leader said. "Best you ride on." "Funny thing," Marcus replied, keeping his voice conversational. "But when I hear gunshots on my land, I figure it concerns me plenty." "Your land?" The second hunter, a thin man with nervous eyes, looked around uncertainly. "This is canyon country. Ain't nobody's land." "Check your maps," Marcus said flatly. "This canyon's been part of my deed for 8 years, which makes you boys trespassers." It wasn't entirely true. The canyon straddled the boundary between his property and federal land, but Marcus was gambling that these men didn't know the area well enough to call his bluff. "We're tracking a dangerous fugitive," the leader said, trying a different approach. "Runaway Indian. We got legal authority to bring her back." "Let's see it." "What?" "Your legal authority. Federal marshals carry badges and warrants. Bounty hunters carry papers from the courts. What do you boys carry?" The 3 men exchanged glances, and Marcus could see them weighing their options. They outnumbered him, but he had the high ground and the look of a man who knew how to use the rifle he was holding. "Look, friend," the thin hunter said, "there's good money in this. We can split it 4 ways if you help us out." "Not interested," Marcus said. "In fact, I'm thinking you boys should head on back to wherever you came from and forget you ever saw this place." "Can't do that," the leader said, his hand drifting toward his gun. "We got a job to finish." "Then you got a problem," Marcus replied, "because the lady's under my protection now." The words surprised Marcus even as he spoke them. He'd acted on instinct, but now he was committed to a course of action that could get him killed. "Your protection?" The leader laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You got no idea what you're getting into, mister." "Maybe not. But I know what's right and what's wrong, and hunting down a woman like she's an animal falls into the wrong category." The standoff stretched out for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Marcus could see the Cheyenne woman watching from her position in the box canyon, her dark eyes taking in every detail of the confrontation. Finally, the leader made his move, going for his gun with the confidence of a man who'd won this kind of fight before. He hadn't counted on Marcus Stone's cavalry training. Marcus's rifle was up and firing before the leader cleared leather. The shot took the big man in the shoulder, spinning him around and dropping him to his knees. The other 2 hunters scrambled for cover behind the rocks, but Marcus was already moving, using the terrain to his advantage. "Next shot won't be a..." "Morning," Marcus called out. "You boys want to ride out of here alive. Now's the time to do it. Jake's hit bad." The thin hunter called back. "Then you better get him to a doctor," Marcus replied. "But you're going to do it without the woman." For a moment, Marcus thought they might keep fighting. Then he heard the sound of horses being mounted and hooves clattering on stone as the 2 unhurt hunters helped their wounded leader out of the canyon. "This ain't over," the leader shouted as they retreated. "You made a big mistake today." "Wouldn't be the first time," Marcus muttered to himself. When the sound of hoofbeats had faded completely, Marcus made his way down to where the Cheyenne woman was waiting. Up close, he could see that she was beautiful in the way of wild things, proud and untamed, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She spoke first in accented but clear English. "Why did you help me?" "Seemed like the right thing to do," Marcus said simply. "Those men were hunting you like an animal. Many white men would have joined them. I'm not most white men." She studied his face for a long moment, as if trying to read his character. "I am called Swift Deer. I am Cheyenne. Marcus Stone. I run cattle about 2 miles from here. The men who hunted me, they will return with others." Marcus nodded. He'd figured as much. "You got somewhere safe to go?" Swift Deer's expression grew troubled. "My band is 3 days' ride north, but the way is watched. These hunters, they have been tracking our people for weeks, waiting for someone to leave the protection of the reservation." "Reservation?" "We are supposed to remain on the land the government has given us. but my younger brother. He ran away to join the warriors, who still fight in the mountains. I was trying to find him, to bring him home before he gets himself killed." Marcus could hear the pain in her voice. "And now you're stuck." "Yes, I cannot go forward without being caught, and I cannot go back without leading these men to my people." Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking. He'd already made one impulsive decision today that had probably gotten him into more trouble than he could handle. What he was considering now would definitely make things worse. "There's another option," he said finally. "What?" "You come with me. Stay at my ranch until things cool down. Then we figure out a safe way to get you home." Swift Deer stared at him in amazement. "You would do this? Hide a fugitive Indian on your land? You're not a fugitive. You're a woman trying to save her brother. There's a difference. The law will not see it that way." "Then the law's wrong," Marcus said firmly. "Wouldn't be the first time for that either." Swift Deer was quiet for a long time, clearly weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. "I accept your offer, Marcus Stone, but I warn you, helping me will bring danger to your door." "Danger and I are old acquaintances," Marcus said with a slight smile. "I reckon we can handle whatever comes." As they made their way out of Thunder Canyon together, Marcus found himself wondering what he'd gotten himself into. 8 years of peaceful solitude were about to come to an end, and he had the feeling that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't imagine. Behind them, the canyon walls seemed to whisper with the wind, as if the ancient stones themselves were approving of the choice he'd made. For 3 days, Swift Deer proved to be an ideal guest. She was quiet without being withdrawn, helpful without being intrusive, and possessed a knowledge of frontier survival that impressed even Marcus. She could track animals by signs he couldn't see, knew which plants were edible and which were medicinal, and had a way with his horses that bordered on magical. Marcus found himself enjoying her company more than he'd expected. After 8 years of talking mostly to his animals, having intelligent conversation over dinner was a luxury he'd forgotten he missed. Swift Deer told him stories of Cheyenne traditions and history, while Marcus shared tales of his cavalry days and the challenges of building a ranch from nothing. On the 4th morning, as Marcus was checking his horses in the corral, Swift Deer approached him with a troubled expression. "Riders coming," she said quietly, "from the north." Marcus looked in the direction she was pointing, but saw nothing. "How many?" 6, maybe 7, still far off, but moving with purpose. Marcus had learned not to question Swift Deer's senses. If she said riders were coming, they were coming. The bounty hunters? No, these ride differently. These are my people. Marcus felt a chill of apprehension. "Your people found you?" It would seem so. Swift Deer's expression was unreadable. "They have come for me." Within an hour, the riders were visible to Marcus as well, a group of Cheyenne warriors approaching at a steady pace. As they drew closer, Marcus could see they were well armed and riding with the disciplined formation of experienced fighters. "Should I be worried?" Marcus asked. "I do not know," Swift Deer replied honestly. "Much will depend on who leads them and what they have been told." The riders stopped about 50 yards from Marcus's house, clearly visible but not immediately threatening. One of them, an older man with silver hair and the bearing of a chief, rode forward alone. "That is Gray Wolf," Swift Deer said quietly. "He is my uncle and a member of the tribal council." Gray Wolf approached slowly, his hands visible but close to his weapons. When he was close enough to speak without shouting, he addressed Swift Deer in rapid Cheyenne. Her responses were equally quick, and Marcus could tell from their tones that this was a serious conversation. Finally, Gray Wolf turned his attention to Marcus, studying him with the intense gaze of a man who had survived many battles by accurately judging the character of others. You are the white man who helped my niece escape the bounty hunters, Grey Wolf said in careful English. I am, Marcus replied simply. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. Grey Wolf's expression didn't change, but Marcus sensed he was being evaluated by standards he didn't fully understand. Swift Deer tells me you risked your life for a stranger. This is unusual behavior for a white man in these times. Maybe, but it's the only behavior I can live with. Grey Wolf dismounted and walked closer, his movements fluid, despite what Marcus guessed was an age of at least 60 years. What do you know of Cheyenne ways, Marcus Stone? Not much, Marcus admitted. I served with some of your scouts during my army days. Good men, every one of them. Beyond that, I know you're people who value honor and courage. And what do you know of debts? Marcus frowned, unsure where this was leading. I know that debts should be paid. Among my people, when someone saves a life, a debt is created. Not a debt of money or goods, but a debt of honor. Such debts are sacred and must be acknowledged properly. I don't need any acknowledgement, Marcus said quickly. I just did what anyone should have done. But you are not anyone, Grey Wolf replied. You are the man who stood alone against 3 armed hunters to protect one of our women. You are the man who offered shelter without asking for payment or favor. Such actions create bonds that cannot be ignored. Swift Deer stepped forward and spoke rapidly to her uncle in Cheyenne. Grey Wolf listened intently, occasionally asking questions. Marcus caught a few words he recognized: warrior, courage, honor, but most of the conversation was beyond his understanding. When they finished talking, Grey Wolf looked at Marcus with what might have been the beginning of a smile. My niece tells me interesting things about you, Marcus Stone. She says you handle horses like one born to it. She says you show respect for the land and its creatures. She says you speak truly and act with honor. She's a good judge of character, Marcus said, feeling slightly uncomfortable with the praise. She is indeed. Which is why the council has decided to offer you something that has not been offered to a white man in many generations. What kind of something? Grey Wolf gestured to the other riders, who now dismounted and began approaching. Marcus noticed they were all older men, carrying themselves with the dignity of leaders and decision-makers. These are members of our tribal council, Grey Wolf explained. We have ridden here not just to retrieve Swift Deer, but to honor a debt and to extend an invitation. An invitation to what? To participate in a ceremony that has been lost to our people for 3 generations. A ceremony of adoption that would make you, in the eyes of our tribe, a true brother of the Cheyenne. Marcus felt as if the ground had shifted beneath his feet. I don't understand. Swift Deer moved to stand beside her uncle. In the old days, when a warrior of another tribe performed great acts of courage or kindness for our people, he could be adopted into the tribe through sacred ceremony. But this has not happened since my grandfather's time. The ceremony was thought to be lost. But it is not lost, Grey Wolf continued. The old men remember. The old women remember. And now the council has voted. If you are willing, we will perform the ceremony of the sacred bond, and you will become our brother in truth as well as deed. Marcus looked around at the assembled council members, seeing respect and approval in their weathered faces. Why? Why would you do this for me? Because honor recognizes honor, Grey Wolf said simply. Because courage deserves acknowledgement. And because the spirits have told us that the time has come to build bridges between our peoples, one man at a time. What would this ceremony involve? You would spend 4 days with us, learning our ways, participating in rituals of purification and instruction. On the 4th day, if you still wished to proceed, you would undergo the final ceremony and emerge as a full member of our tribe, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails, including the right to marry Cheyenne women, own property within tribal lands, and speak in council meetings, Swift Deer added, her eyes dancing with something that might have been amusement. Marcus felt overwhelmed. I need time to think about this. Of course, Grey Wolf said. Such a decision should not be made lightly. But know this, the offer will not be made again. If you refuse now, or if you begin the ceremony and do not complete it, the old ways will be closed to you forever. How long do I have to decide? We will camp by the river tonight. If you wish to accept our offer, join us at sunrise. If not, Grey Wolf shrugged. We will remember you as a friend, but the sacred path will remain closed. As the council members moved away to set up their camp, Swift Deer lingered behind. This is a great honor they offer you, she said quietly. In all our history, fewer than a dozen men from other tribes have undergone this ceremony. And what happens if I refuse? Nothing. You continue your life as before. But Marcus, She paused, searching for the right words. Sometimes the spirits place opportunities before us that will never come again. My uncle speaks truly. This ceremony has been lost for generations. That the council chooses to revive it for you. This is not chance. What do you think I should do? I think you should ask yourself what kind of man you want to be. The man who lives safely alone on his ranch, or the man who embraces the chance to become part of something larger than himself. That evening, Marcus sat on his porch watching the smoke from the Cheyenne camp rise into the darkening sky. His comfortable, predictable life stretched out before him like a familiar trail, safe and solitary. But Swift Deer's words echoed in his mind, along with Grey Wolf's talk of bridges between peoples and bonds of honor. He thought about his years in the cavalry, about the Cheyenne scouts he'd served with and respected. He thought about the empty conversations in town, where men talked mostly about weather and cattle prices. He thought about the long winter evenings with no one to talk to but his horses. And he thought about the look in Swift Deer's eyes when she spoke of becoming part of something larger than himself. By the time the stars appeared, Marcus Stone had made his decision. At sunrise, he would join the council by the river and begin a journey that would change everything he thought he knew about family, belonging, and what it meant to be truly home. Dawn found Marcus standing at the edge of the Cheyenne camp, carrying a small pack with the few belongings Grey Wolf had told him to bring. The council members were already awake, tending a sacred fire that Swift Deer explained had been burning since midnight. You have come, Grey Wolf said, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely surprised. I have, Marcus replied. I accept your offer. Grey Wolf nodded solemnly. Then we begin. But first, you must understand, once we start this ceremony, there is no stopping partway through. You must complete all 4 days, or the sacred bond will be broken forever. I understand. Do you? This is not like your white man's church, where you sit quietly and listen to words. Our ceremony will test your courage, your endurance, and your commitment. You will be asked to do things that may seem strange or frightening. Marcus looked around at the assembled council members, seeing the gravity in their faces. I'm ready. The first day was devoted to purification. Marcus was led to a sweat lodge constructed of bent willow branches and buffalo hides, where he joined the council members in ritual cleansing. The heat was intense, and the chanted prayers were in a language he didn't understand. But Marcus found himself drawn into the rhythm and meaning of the ceremony. Between sessions in the sweat lodge, Grey Wolf began teaching him about Cheyenne history and values. Marcus learned about the 4 sacred directions, the importance of harmony with nature, and the complex system of kinship and responsibility that bound the tribe together. Among the Cheyenne, Grey Wolf explained as they rested by the river, a man is judged not by what he owns, but by what he gives away. Not by how many he can defeat, but by how many he can protect. Do you understand this? I think so, Marcus said. It's about service to others rather than service to yourself. Yes, and about understanding that strength comes not from standing alone, but from knowing your place in the circle of all life. The second day brought tests of endurance and skill. Marcus was required to fast from sunrise to sunset, drinking only water while participating in various challenges designed to test his physical and mental abilities. He tracked game through difficult terrain, demonstrated his skill with weapons, and learned traditional Cheyenne hunting techniques. "You move well for a white man," commented one of the council members, an elderly warrior named Spotted Horse. "Your army training has given you good instincts." "But he thinks too much," added another councilman with a chuckle. "He analyzes every step instead of trusting his body to know what to do." Marcus found this criticism surprisingly accurate. His military background had taught him to plan and analyze, but the Cheyenne way seemed to emphasize intuition and natural flow. The third day was devoted to spiritual instruction. Marcus learned about Cheyenne religious beliefs, participated in prayer ceremonies, and was taught the sacred songs that would be sung during his adoption ceremony. This was the most challenging day for him, as the spiritual concepts were often very different from anything in his Christian upbringing. "Your white man's religion teaches that man is separate from nature, above it," Gray Wolf explained during a break in the instruction. "Our way teaches that man is part of nature, connected to all living things. Can you accept this?" Marcus thought about his years on the ranch, about his connection to the land and animals he cared for. "I think I've been living it without realizing it," he said. Swift Deer, who had been observing the ceremonies but not participating, approached him that evening as he sat by the fire. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Different," Marcus said honestly. "Like I'm discovering parts of myself I never knew existed." That is the purpose of the ceremony. Not to change who you are, but to reveal who you have always been. "And what if who I've always been isn't worthy of this honor?" "Then you would not have made it this far," Swift Deer said simply. "The ceremonies have a way of revealing truth. If you were not meant for this, you would have left by now." The fourth day dawned clear and cold, with a crystalline quality, too. The air that seemed to make everything more vivid. Marcus had spent the night in prayer and meditation, as instructed, and felt a strange combination of nervousness and anticipation. The final ceremony began at noon. Marcus was painted with sacred symbols by the tribal medicine man, each mark representing an aspect of Cheyenne identity he was taking on. He was given new clothes in the traditional style, and his hair was braided with eagle feathers that Gray Wolf said had been blessed by the spirits. From this moment forward, Gray Wolf announced to the assembled tribe, for the entire band had gathered to witness this rare event, "You are no longer Marcus Stone, the white rancher. You are stands alone no more, brother of the Cheyenne, member of our family in all ways that matter." The new name hit Marcus like a physical blow. It was so accurate, so precisely descriptive of what this ceremony meant to him, that he felt tears prick his eyes. The actual adoption ritual was complex and beautiful, involving exchanges of gifts, spoken vows, and the sharing of sacred foods. But the moment that Marcus would remember for the rest of his life came when Gray Wolf placed a hand on his shoulder and spoke the final words of the ceremony. "You came to us as a stranger who showed kindness to one of our own. You leave us as family, bound to us by ties stronger than blood, deeper than time. Welcome home, brother." As the ceremony concluded and the celebration began, Marcus now stands alone no more, found himself surrounded by people who no longer saw him as an outsider, but as one of their own. Children who had watched him with curiosity now approached with shy smiles. Warriors who had measured him with careful eyes now clasped his shoulders in friendship, but it was Swift Deer's reaction that moved him most. She approached him as the formal ceremonies were winding down, her expression serious but warm. "How does it feel to have a family again?" she asked. "Overwhelming," Marcus admitted, "and wonderful, and terrifying." "Those are the right feelings," she said with a smile. "Family is all of those things. Swift dear, I need to ask you something." "Yes?" "This ceremony, this honor they've given me. It's not just about what I did for you, is it? There's something more." She was quiet for a long moment. "You are perceptive. Stands alone no more. Yes, there is more. The council has seen signs, in dreams, in the patterns of birds, in the behavior of animals. They believe that difficult times are coming for our people, times when we will need allies among the whites who understand our ways and speak for us with honor. They think I can be that ally. They think you already are that ally. Today's ceremony simply made it official." As the sun set over the Wyoming Badlands, Marcus Stands Alone No More sat with his new family around the sacred fire, listening to the ancient songs that were now his songs too. Tomorrow he would return to his ranch, but he would not be returning alone. He carried with him now the strength of an entire people and the knowledge that he was part of something far greater than himself. The loneliness that had defined his life for 8 years was gone, replaced by bonds of kinship that would endure. For as long as the wind blew across the plains and the eagle soared in the endless sky. 3 months after the ceremony, Marcus, now known throughout the territory as both his white and Cheyenne names, stood in the main street of Cedar Ridge, facing down Mayor William Hutchins and half the town council. Word of his adoption into the Cheyenne tribe had spread, and not everyone was pleased. "Stone, you've gone too far this time," Mayor Hutchins declared, his face red with anger. "Bad enough you're harboring that Indian woman on your ranch, but now you're claiming to be one of them yourself?" "I'm not claiming anything," Marcus replied calmly. "I was legally adopted into the tribe, according to both federal law and traditional custom. The territorial government has recognized the adoption." "Well, this town doesn't recognize it," snapped Councilman Roberts. "We got decent white families here who don't appreciate having some Indian lovers speaking for the savages." Marcus felt his temper flare, but he remembered Gray Wolf's teachings about patience and wisdom. "Those savages are my family now, Roberts. And they're the reason your cattle haven't been rustled and your children haven't been kidnapped by real hostiles." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means the Cheyenne Band has been acting as an unofficial patrol for this area for months, keeping the more aggressive tribes away from your settlement. They've been protecting you, and you didn't even know it." This revelation caused murmurs among the gathered crowd. Several ranchers exchanged uncertain glances. "That true, Stone?" asked Tom Henderson, whose spread bordered Marcus's ranch. "Ask Sheriff Morrison. He's been coordinating with Gray Wolf's people since last spring." Sheriff Morrison, who had been standing quietly at the edge of the crowd, stepped forward reluctantly. "Stone's right. The Cheyenne have been keeping us informed about hostile movements in the area. Saved us from at least 2 potential raids that I know of." "Then why the hell didn't you tell us?" Mayor Hutchins demanded. "Because I knew you'd react exactly like you're reacting now," Morrison replied. "Sometimes it's easier to keep the peace." By keeping folks ignorant, Marcus saw his opportunity. "Gentlemen, I'm not asking you to love the Cheyenne. I'm asking you to recognize that we have more to gain by working with them than by fighting them. They want the same things you want: safety for their families, prosperity for their community, and the right to live in peace." "Pretty words," said Roberts. "But what happens when the government decides to move them again? What happens when the army comes calling? Then we hope that having allies in both communities will make the transition smoother for everyone involved." Over the following weeks, Marcus found himself serving as an unofficial mediator between the white settlement and the Cheyenne Band. It wasn't easy work. Both sides carried generations of mistrust and misunderstanding, but gradually Small bridges began to form. The first breakthrough came when a party of Lakota raiders attacked an isolated homestead 20 miles south of Cedar Ridge. The Cheyenne scouts spotted the war party and rode to warn the town, arriving just in time to help defend against the attack. The sight of Cheyenne warriors fighting alongside white settlers did more to change attitudes than any of Marcus's speeches could have accomplished. "Never thought I'd say this," Tom Henderson told Marcus after the fight, "but your Indian friends saved my bacon today. That war party would have hit my place next if they hadn't been stopped." The second breakthrough came when a fever outbreak struck the town in late winter. Swift Deer, who had learned traditional healing from her grandmother, worked alongside the town doctor to treat the sick. Her knowledge of herbal remedies and her tireless care for patients, regardless of their previous attitudes toward Indians, gradually won over even the most skeptical residents. "That woman's got more medical knowledge than doctors I've known with fancy degrees," Dr. Patterson admitted to Marcus. "Where did she learn all this?" "From her grandmother, who learned it from her grandmother," Marcus explained. "It's knowledge that goes back generations, passed down through oral tradition. Well, she can teach my daughter any time she wants. This town could use that kind of expertise." But the most significant change came in Marcus himself. The lonely, bitter man who had isolated himself on a remote ranch was gone, replaced by someone who understood his place in a larger community. He still worked his land and tended his cattle, but now his home served as a meeting place where both cultures could come together on neutral ground. Swift Deer had become a permanent resident of his ranch, though their relationship remained respectfully undefined. She helped him understand the subtleties of Cheyenne culture while he taught her about the complexities of white society. Together, they were creating something new, a bridge between worlds that neither could have built alone. "Do you ever regret it?" Swift Deer asked him one evening as they sat on his porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of red and gold. "Regret what? Giving up your solitude, your simple life?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "I thought I was living simply before, but I was wrong. Simple living isn't about being alone. It's about understanding your connections to everything around you. I'm living more simply now than I ever did when I was by myself." "The council is pleased with how things have developed," Swift Deer said. "Gray Wolf says you have become exactly what they hoped, a bridge between peoples." "And what do you say?" She was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was soft with emotion. "I say you have become what you were always meant to be, a man who stands with others instead of standing alone." As if to emphasize her point, riders appeared on the horizon, a mixed group of Cheyenne warriors and white ranchers, returning from a joint patrol of the territory. Marcus could see Gray Wolf riding alongside Sheriff Morrison, the two leaders deep in conversation about something that was probably important to the security of both communities. "Look at that," Marcus said with satisfaction. 6 months ago, those men would have been shooting at each other. Now they're working together. Change is possible, Swift Deer agreed, but it requires people willing to take the first step, even when they don't know where the path will lead. "Speaking of paths," Marcus said, turning to face her, "I've been thinking about something." "What?" "About making some changes around here. This ranch could support more people, and I've been wondering if you'd be interested in making it your permanent home." Swift Deer looked at him with surprise and something else. Hope, perhaps, or joy. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" "I'm asking if you'd consider becoming my wife. If you'd help me build something here that belongs to both our worlds." "Yes," she said simply, and Marcus felt as if his heart might burst with happiness. A year later, Marcus Stone stands alone, no more, stood in the same spot where he'd first encountered bounty hunters chasing a desperate woman through Thunder Canyon. But now the place held different memories. Today, It was where he and Swift Deer had chosen to build their new home, a house that incorporated both white and Cheyenne architectural traditions, sitting on land that was legally his, but spiritually belonged to both their peoples. Children played in the yard, some white, some Cheyenne, some mixed blood like the son Swift Deer carried, their laughter echoing off the canyon walls that had once witnessed violence and fear. The trading post Marcus had built near the house was busy with customers from both communities, and the school Swift Deer had started was teaching children to read and write in 2 languages. No regrets? Swift Deer asked, echoing her question. From the year before. None, Marcus replied, and meant it completely. He had set out to help one woman escape her pursuers, and had found a family, a purpose, and a home that was richer than anything he could have imagined. The ceremony that had made him Cheyenne hadn't changed who he was. It had revealed who he had always been meant to be. As the sun set over the Wyoming Badlands, Marcus watched the smoke from cook fires rise from houses where white and Cheyenne families lived as neighbors, and he knew that some gifts from the past were worth any price. The sacred bond had held, and from it had grown something beautiful and lasting, a community where people were judged not by the color of their skin or the language they spoke, but by the content of their character and their willingness to stand with others when it mattered most. Marcus Stone no longer stood alone, and never would again.